We have spent the past decade talking about Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Jacob deGrom, all these like big arms in MLB DFS. And tonight we get to feature a lot of the new faces, a lot of guys who haven't been like established as being high strikeout, high upside guys for DFS, but who I think we can pretty definitively say are in that tier right now. We're going to break down which of those guys I like most for tonight, which ones we should buy into, which ones might want to be a bit more skeptical of, let you know where we should turn for tonight in daily fantasy baseball. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire. You're going to break down tonight's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for tonight. The one weather spot is in Chicago and could be multiple aspects of this that are noteworthy. That's the Cubs and the Cardinals. There is rain in the forecast before first pitch. Looks like it may be out of there before first pitch, so might not impact the start of the game. But if they play, winds are in from center at 13 miles per hour, and temperatures are just 53 degrees. So it is a downgrade to batters as a result of the temperature, downgrade to batters because of the wind being in at Wrigley Field. All that stuff does negatively impact batters. So I would downgrade batters and upgrade pitchers in a big way should they play. But make sure you check back on the timeline of that weather to ensure they will, in fact, play for tonight. We'll dig into the implications of that, whether that pushes any of those guys into the top of the pitching pool, and much more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the Solo Shot in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcast, just search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it may be. Search it there, find it, hit subscribe. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. And as always, these podcasts do go up in video form over on the FanDuel YouTube page as well. Subscribe there and give us a thumbs up if you like what you hear. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and you can get in on the action right from first tip with FanDuel. Right now, all customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend when you bet the NBA playoffs. That's right. Just place a 3+ leg same-game parlay or same-game parlay plus on any NBA playoff game. You'll get bonus bets back if you don't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Head to the FanDuel app and get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend of the NBA playoffs. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. And Massachusetts Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. Or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate. Zach Gallen headlines things. He comes in here at $11,300, followed by Anthony DeSclafani at $10,200. Freddie Peralta is $10,000. Marcus Stroman, $98,000. Hunter Brown, $96,000. With Logan Gilbert coming in at $9,500. Nestor Cortez is $93,000 against the A's. Dylan Cease at $91,000. With Tony Gonsolin and Patrick Sandoval, the others at $8,000 or higher. Last week, I was on Zach Gallen, and that did not work out because he had his first dud this year. But he's back at home tonight, and he is in an elite matchup, and I'm going right back to Zach Gallen with no reservations for this slate. In that start last week, Gallen let up 3 earned runs across 5 innings and had just 6 strikeouts. The velocity in that game was fine, though, which I think allows us to look at a larger sample. And the larger sample on Gallen this year is sick. He has a 2.47 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 35% with a 3% walk rate. The skill interactive ERA and strikeout rate both tops in the slate by a wide margin. He's facing the Marlins at home for tonight. The Marlins against righties so far this year have an 87 WRC plus with a 24% strikeout rate and no power at all. So it's a great spot. It's also a revenge game for the former Marlin and Zach Gallen. They traded him away. They got them Jazz Chisholm, but hey, maybe a little bit of juice is flowing there for Gallen as a result. I haven't projected for 8.5 strikeouts for tonight, which is the top number on the slate by a wide margin. Obviously, the revenge narrative plays a massive factor into that. But either way, Zach Gallen, I'm more than happy to rank this guy first. Salary's high at 11.3, but with a lot of the stacks I want for today, I can make that work. So Zach Gallen, to me, the clear-cut number one pitcher on tonight's slate. I've also gotten bit a couple times by using Logan Gilbert this year, and his ERA does reflect that. It's at 4.01. But he's facing the Rangers tonight, and I like him a lot here at $9,500. The ERA for Gilbert, as mentioned, is not great, but that's kind of the one bad thing in his profile. Everything else is really good. He's throwing a splitter this year and throwing more curveballs as well, which is leading to a lot of strikeouts. Gilbert has a 30% strikeout rate across 6 starts with a 5% walk rate, leading to a Steel Interactive ERA of 3.18. That likely means that the results for Gilbert should be better than what they've been so far. It's not the easiest matchup tonight. The Rangers have a 115 WRC plus against righties. They got plenty of power too. And they're also, they're definitely a team that I don't actively target by any means. They do strike out a bit though, and Gilbert is at home. I haven't projected for 6.9 strikeouts tonight, which ranks behind just Gallen and Freddie Peralta on this slate. But Peralta's facing the Dodgers. That's not great. Marcus Stroman is in play due to the weather. We'll talk about him and things to watch. But the strikeouts here, good for Gilbert. The matchup not as bad. So I will go Logan Gilbert, number 2, with a hair differentiating him between Marcus Stroman and above Freddie Peralta as well. Now, when I'm looking at the pitchers below $9,000 searching for our value play, I find nothing. There are no pitchers below $9,000 I want to use tonight. So I'm not going to talk about them. And instead, I'm going to talk about Dylan Cease. He's right at 91, so almost a value play. We'll talk about him instead as the quote-unquote value for tonight. He's facing the Royals, which helps a bunch here. They have a 77 WRC plus against righties. That was even lower before they got to face the A's bullpen for a full series. I think it was like 64 at one point. So the A's bullpen did boost them here. 25% strikeout rate for them, 7% walk rate. They're a great matchup for a righty. And honestly, Cease could use that boost right now. His velocity was back up a bit in his last time out, which is a good thing. But even with the velocity being closer to what it was last year, he still walked 4 guys and let up 4 earned runs in 5 innings. For the full season now, Cease has a 12% walk rate. He's letting up a ton of hard contact. So he needs to face a less powerful, less patient team. Luckily, he gets that tonight here against the Royals. He still has a 26% strikeout rate. So that's kind of the one thing Cease has still been doing pretty well. And that's why I haven't projected for 6.5 strikeouts tonight. That's not bad for $9,100, even if it does, come with some downside with the walks and the hard contact. It's even better if the velocity is up again for Dylan Cease here. I prefer Gilbert and Gallen above him, despite the salary. So I'm going to go those guys 1, 2, Gallen 1, Gilbert 2. I think that Cease is in the mix with the guys like Peralta and like Stroman. So everyone in 9,000 range, pretty similar for you tonight, but I'll go Gilbert 2 above them. Stacking for tonight is a bit difficult because it's going to force us to take some leaps of faith and be okay with suboptimal situations. One of those suboptimal situations is the Yankees lineup. It's bad right now. It's real bad. So in order to stack them, I need a pretty elite situation, but I think we get that for tonight. And I'm willing to stack them here. And that's because they're facing the A's. We talked a lot about how bad their bullpen is. That is a major factor here, honestly. And honestly, it might be the primary factor. The opening matchup isn't bad either, though. They're facing JP Sears, who is a lefty. And that means a lot of the primary guys who are still healthy here do get the platoon advantage. Sears is not terrible. His ERA this year is 5.06, but it comes with a 4.08 skill interactive ERA. That's not bad, but it's letting up a lot of fly balls. And that can work in Oakland, but it's less likely to work in New York at that park. So I think the Yankees have enough guys who can hit lefties. It's not fun by any means, but against this bullpen, I think we have, we have to do it on this slate. So I will go the Yankees to the top stack, despite the fact makes me a little bit queasy to do that given the state of their offense right now. The Yankees did just get Harrison Bader back. He already has 2 home runs since the return. He was not jaw-droppingly good in his rehab stint, but in his career, 228 ISO against lefties. I don't think they can afford to not have him in there. So I'd expect Bader to play. He's $2,700. He's looked good so far, so I'll go for him. I think that he's probably one of the focal points of this Yankee stack. We'll go with it. It's not a fun offense, but I think they make sense for tonight. Second stack I feel better about, but it's not in a great park. That is in San Francisco, stacking the Giants. They're facing the Nationals and Jake Irvin. Temperature in San Francisco, 57 for tonight, which is pretty low even for this slate. It's the second lowest behind just that Cubs game. So weather is not good here. I still think it might be the number 2 stack, though. Jake Irvin made his debut for the Nats last week, and he got through that okay. Let up 1 earned run across 4 1/3 innings. The rest of the data was not as fun, though. In that game, Irvin had 4 walks compared to 3 strikeouts. His swinging strike rate was 4.9%. And based on previous data, I think that was kind of to be expected. In AAA this year, Irvin had a 20% strikeout rate with an 11% walk rate. Last year in AA, he was fine, but that's AA. And he also let up a 42% fly ball rate there. He's facing the Giants tonight, as mentioned, and they've had a great start to this year against righties with a 124 WRC+. Their ISO is 225, so there's a lot of power in this lineup right now. It's not the best park factor. That stinks, but that 225 ISO, a lot of that has come in San Francisco. So I still think we should be high on them despite that, even though, again, like the Yankees, it doesn't feel great to stack at San Francisco, but I still think it makes sense for tonight. Did we talk about JD Davis? I think it was last week within this Giant stack, and typically he's a guy we use against just lefties. And as they get healthier, maybe he's not playing every day against righties, but against righties this year, 338 ISO for JD Davis. That's awesome. I think he should play against righties, frankly. He's not going to steal bases, and we do want that this year, but he's viable against righties and lefties right now. I think the righties part very noteworthy, especially with Davis's salary still at $3,000. So just Dongs Davis. Finally, the nickname has become truth. We were just 6 years too early on calling him that when he was with the Mets. So we'll take it now. JD Davis, good play for tonight in DFS. If you want a more contrarian stack, I think the Mariners will wind up qualifying there. They're facing John Gray. Gray's ERA this year is 4.40, which is not terrible, but his peripherals are rough. It may not work, but I think it does give us a window to stack and see what happens. I thought Gray pitched pretty well last year, his first year outside of Coors Field. Finished the full year with 3.96 ERA and a 26% strikeout rate. But this year, the velocity is down a bit, and that's especially true on his slider. I'm not sure if he's doing that intentionally, he could be just throwing it differently, but he's also throwing that pitch less often, instead leaning more on his changeup. Last year, the slider was easily Gray's best pitch. It is still his best pitch this year, but the velocity is down. Regardless, it's been good. So throwing it less is concerning for multiple reasons. You can throw fewer breaking balls if you're not feeling 100%, stuff like that. He could reverse course and throw more, but the usage on that pitch has decreased in 3 straight games, and it was its lowest of the year by 5 percentage points last time out. It's possible Gray just doesn't have a feel for that pitch right now for some reason. In that game with the fewest sliders he has thrown this year, he let up 2 home runs, 4 earned runs allowed. He may get better, but as of now, I think it's a worthwhile stack. So I think the Mariners make a lot of sense. I think Gray, again, he could turn things around. That's always a risk here, but for right now, I'm willing to stack against him. I do want to favor the lefties here. It's not a ton of guys in this Mariners lineup, but I think it makes it easy to rank Jared Kelenic and Cal Raleigh at the top of our stacking list. And honestly, neither guy is super high salaried. Kelenic is 34, Raleigh 29. Both those salaries very reasonable, and both those guys have shown a lot of upside so far this year. So start with the lefties in Kelenic and Raleigh, then filter in the righties and go with that. But to me, they're the building blocks here due to the issues Gray has had against lefties, both last year and this year. Things to watch for tonight. Did want to touch a bit on Marcus Stroman. The weather does boost his appeal there. He is just not as big of a strikeout guy as Gilbert and Gallen are. I had Stroman projected for 5.6 strikeouts tonight, which is pretty good if we can assume he lets up minimal earned runs. I just like their upside more. I don't blame you if you want to do it, but the strikeouts are my rationale. The reduced number of strikeouts for Stroman relative to them is why I'll go with those guys above him, despite the good weather at Wrigley Field for tonight. The A's are facing Nestor Cortes, who's actually been weird this year, where he's been letting up a ton of fly balls. He cut back on his cutter usage in his second start, and in the 5 starts since, his fly ball rate is 70%. The A's, bad team, but they've actually been pretty good against lefties in a very small sample this year. So I don't mind it. I don't think it's the worst idea to consider stacking here. Honestly, for like a single entry tournament, I might just do it. The A's are plus 170 to win or 172 to win right now. So like, I don't think people will be in them for stacking, but I think it's worth a shot. It's not safe by any means, but I think it's worth a shot to stack the A's in tournaments for tonight. Finally, the White Sox roster is super depleted, which means I can't stack them, but you could consider one-offs here if you like anybody against Zach Greinke. Greinke lets up fly balls, lets up hard contact. So again, not a ton of guys here you really want to use in DFS, but I think that the White Sox are at least viable if you find somebody you like within that lineup. Let's finish up here with the dinger calls for today. Both these will be at Yankee Stadium. And the boring home run call, which is wild to say, given where he was at the beginning of the year, where he was last year, which is like 16 different teams. But the boring home run call is Brent Rooker. Brent Rooker's been awesome so far this year. Rooker, when he was coming out of college, I know that was like one of the first draft classes where they had like StatCast data from some of the stadiums. His StatCast data, I remember, was like phenomenal in college, which is why the Twins took him pretty early. So it's not a huge shock to see him doing this, but 10 home runs so far this year. His salary is 42, but like, you know, I get it. So boring home run call is Brent Rooker for tonight. The fun one is in that same game, Harrison Bader, if he does play. I think, again, maybe it's not boring because he's gone deep in 2 of his 4 games so far this year, but has always hit lefties pretty well at Yankee Stadium, facing a lefty. He lets up some fly balls. So home run calls for today, both at Yankee Stadium, be Brent Rooker and Harrison Bader. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. But as a reminder, make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We put these up every weekday here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and over on the FanDuel YouTube page. So also make sure you're subscribed over there. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Tuesday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.